Thank you all for joining us online, either via Zoom or Facebook, for our final event of our 18th annual Native American Studies Week and Native American Heritage Month celebration. I'm Dr. Stephen Criswell, the Director of Native American Studies for USC Lancaster. If you've joined us for any of our earlier events this month, you know that this year's theme is Native Americans in Sports. We talked last week about Jim Thorpe, and this week about members of the Catawba Nation and their contributions to sports and athleticism, as well as Cherokee women's stickball yesterday. So today, we are delighted to present our annual W. Brent Bergen Lunch and Learn lecture. Brent was our founding archivist at our Native American Studies Center, and he established our Lunch and Learn series, among many other accomplishments. And a fund was established in his honor to support this annual program. And I'm certain that Brent would have loved today's speaker. And I want to thank Professor Chris Judge for shepherding the Lunch and Learn program after Brent's passing, and taking such good care of it and presenting such wonderful programs, which we have today, because we are honored to have with us Vincent Schilling. Vincent is a Akwesasne Mohawk?
Yep.
Yeah.
Akwesasne.
Okay. Is an enrolled member of the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, is an award-winning author that is currently working on a book commissioned by Random House Viking about Native American boarding schools. He is the founder and editor of Native Viewpoint at www.nativeviewpoint.com. It's pretty easy to remember. Vincent is also an award-winning producer, journalist, and public speaker, in addition to serving as the current executive vice president and co-owner of Schilling Media.
CEO now.
CEO, congratulations.
Well, it's my cup.
Promotion. Yeah.
I can promote myself.
Just king. It's a Native American-owned media and media relations corporation. He is a U.S. Army veteran, and I want to wish you a happy Veterans Day, that trained as a 91A combat medic and 92B medical lab specialist, and served at Letterman Army Medical Center. He later became a commissioned officer and served at the battalion as the battalion chemical officer for the 1143 Field Artillery Battalion in Walnut Creek as a lieutenant. He is the former associate editor for Indian Country Today. He's contributed thousands of articles to the publication for over 16 years. As a content media producer, Vincent helped to orchestrate video content for news for over 16 years. In addition to the above organizations, he has contributed video media content to Marvel, NBC, Dateline, Now This News, CBC, APTN, and more. In 2011, he was given a Human Rights Award by the city of Virginia Beach for programs created about Native American issues in the Hampton Roads region. He is also the former host of Native Trailblazers, an online Indigenous radio program that aired every Friday at 8 p.m. on www.blogtalkradio.com/Native Trailblazers from 2010 to 2020, which was nominated for an Aboriginal People's Choice Music Award for Best Aboriginal Music Radio Station or Program. He was given a Bronze Editorial XL Award for the Winds of Change Conflict on a Mountain article featured in the spring 2011 issue. As a public speaker, Vincent has shared his experience and expertise with public, governmental, and private entities to speak about diversity in the workplace and in schools to overcome the stereotypes of Native American people today. You can follow him on Twitter and social media at Vincent Schilling, or at Vince Schilling, Vince Schilling. We can put that in the chat. So Vincent, thank you for joining us again for our Native American Heritage Month events. We're just delighted to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Dr. Crystal. Appreciate it. Boy, that's a lot. I've done a lot of stuff.
You should take a break.
Holy moly, I'm listening to him. Gosh, I did a lot of stuff.
Let somebody else do something, really.
Got it from my dad. Maybe a workaholic. So, hey, thanks so much. Sego, everyone. My name is Vincent Schilling, also Jogolis in my Mohawk language, which means Black Raven. And, I am excited to be here today. It's cool to see some folks in there. Very, very cool. And a funny way how I got my name is my Dota, who Dota means grandmother or grandmotherly person of your family. The Mohawk language is, the language itself is not very specific. It kind of can be broader in terms of the meaning. And she told me one time that, your name is Black Raven, Jokolis. I said, oh, wow. And to me, I was like, wow, that's an awesome name. That's a really tough name, Black Raven. She goes, well, they're also loud and get on my nerves. So I was like, thanks, Dota. So she got tickled out of that. But so thanks so much, everyone. I'm really, really excited you're here today. And, I was talking to Dr. Criswell just before this started, and I was telling him how he had asked me to do a presentation on Native athletes. And in addition to my many hats at Indian Country Today, where I used to work, like I said, now I'm with Native Viewpoint, which is the site I created and founded, and I'm editor of. But when I was with Indian Country Today, I was sports editor for maybe 7 years, I want to say. And wow, I learned a lot about Native sports, specifically in Native athletes. And even before that, I kind of did it backwards. Sometimes journalists become authors, and it kind of worked reverse for me. I don't know how I did it, but I wrote a book first, and then I became a journalist. So I wrote a book about Native athletes, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, I could easily just recite a list of athletes that are Native and recite their statistics, etc. But in my career, I have interviewed a lot, had a lot of experiences with interviewing folks, and I thought, that's where some really wild and fun stories lie. So I have, of course, a list of athletes that I will tell you about, but many of them I have personally interviewed, talked with, had some fun adventures talking to or going to some of their events, etc. And I thought I would kind of give you that personal experience a little bit in a fun way. Take a sip of tea here. So to get started, I'll just go through some of the athletes that I have written about or talked to. And of course, one of the greatest athletes and one of the greatest Native American athletes of all time, and this was even part of the earlier presentation, is of course Jim Thorpe. And this dude is just awesome. The stuff he could do, the stories. I did a lot of research. He is in my book. Native Athletes in Action is the name of it, and it's for kids. The book is for kids, essentially. And so I did a ton of research on each chapter. I think I did 12 or 13 athletes in my book. It's been 15 years now, I forget. But in my research, the stories that I learned about Jim Thorpe are so wild and so amazing, because he was kind of before the rules of football. He went to Carlisle Indian Institute, which was, the first Native American boarding school that was essentially run by the military, run and managed by the military. Richard Henry Pratt was the superintendent, and they created, after several years, created the Carlisle football team. And that's what that big C stands for on his chest you see there. The guy just looks awesome. I wouldn't want to be on the other side of the line from this guy. But the stories I found out is during those days when he was on the team, they would do things like hide the football in their shirt and sneak, and then run across the touchdown to score. Or they would actually have fake footballs sewn onto their jerseys so you couldn't actually tell where the ball was and get confused. Other stories include a time where he stood on the 50-yard line, kicked a field goal, and then turned out the opposite way and then kicked another field goal in the other way. This guy was just intense. And Jim Thorpe was Sac and Fox, and his native name was Bright Path. And he was also, in addition to being amazing football player, baseball player, even played basketball. He was an Olympic gold medalist who won 2 gold medals, and in the pentathlon and decathlon. And this was in the Olympics of 1912. And this was just an amazing. The coolest thing is when he won his gold medal, he walked up to the King of Sweden, King Gustav, and the king placed the gold medal on his neck, and he said, "Sir, you are the greatest athlete of all time." And this really intense moment, and he just looks at him and goes, "Thanks, King." I just love that. I love that story. He's just, "Thanks, King. Appreciate it. Thanks for the gold medal." But the kind of tragic thing about that is because he played what was considered some sandbox baseball, and I think he got paid like I can't remember off the top of my head, but he got paid like $12 a game. I think, like something really insignificant. It was even almost considered amateur level, but because he got paid, was considered professional, and professional athletes cannot be in the Olympics at that time. So he had his gold medal stripped away. And it wasn't till later that his medals were restored, so that was kind of tough for him. And a lot of people also don't know that in 1920 to 21, he was the first leader of what would become the NFL, the National Football League. It was the the American Professional Football Association. And as much as Jim Thorpe had an amazing sports career, a lot of people don't realize that when he was at the Carlisle Institute, he ran away all the time, and successfully ran away, because what happened in these schools at the time was kids would try to want to run away because it was terrible conditions. And at one point, I think the story was, he had run away and his father came out on the porch, and Jim Thorpe had like stolen an entire team of horses and like rode in with like this big thing of horses into his house. Like, hey, I made it, Dad. I got it out of there. So the guy was just a really, really intense guy, and just a heck of a story. And if you guys want to do some research, Jim Thorpe is an amazing athlete in history, and he was actually called one of the greatest athletes of all time, one of the greatest athletes of the 20th century. And just the guy was just amazing. And if there's anyone you want to research, Jim Thorpe is one of those people. But a lot of people don't realize that. Some people think that Jim Thorpe was the first Native American in the Olympics, but actually Franklin Pierce, who was Seneca, was in the 1904 Olympics. And I wish that I could find more. I have looked and looked and looked to try and find more information on Frank Pierce, but he was a marathon runner, and he did participate, but he didn't finish. And that's really all the information I can find on him. And but his name, again, Frank Pierce, want to check him out. And in 1911, Charles Bender was an Ojibwe, and he played for 3 games in the World Series. A lot of people don't realize that. And in 1907, Thomas Longboat, these are older athletes, he was the very first Native American to win the Boston Marathon. So there's a lot of Native athletes out there that people don't really talk about a whole lot. So one of the interviews that I had that was a really, really cool interview was the very first woman in the WNBA. Her name was Ronaldi Vicente, and she was just a marvel. And everyone just looked at her as just like that. She could just make shots out of nowhere. And like I said, she became the first Native American to play in the WNBA. She played all over in Sweden, Greece, Turkey, and in 1997 signed with the Phoenix Mercury. So, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, I tell people about her story and what she did. I mean, people really, really, really looked up to her, and Indian country was just like ablaze with, wow, Renata Vicente, she's Navajo and she's in the WNBA. And a lot of people don't talk about her. A lot of times when I talk about her at speaking engagements, people have never heard of her. And I'm shocked, because she did so much. The first Native American female in the WNBA. And I was talking to her, I was like, how come you don't get more notice? She goes, Vincent, I don't know. I said, well, I'll do the best I can, talk about all I can. But she is not only that, the nicest person I think I've talked to. She just was really cool. And I just really enjoyed talking to her. A lot of people don't know that one of the first, natives in the PGA was Nota Bigay III, and he is Navajo and is Leta Pueblo. And this is in 1999 that he became the first Native American to play in the PGA. And he is the first Native American to get the 3-time All-American, and was a teammate of Tiger Woods. And once again, a lot of people haven't heard of Nota Bigay. A lot have. But, I think that one of the biggest things about Native athletes is, and this is in my experience as a journalist, talking to a lot of Native athletes and going, hey, how come more people don't know about you? And what generally happens is, and the things that I've heard from a lot of these Native athletes is they'll say, Vince, I didn't really tell a lot of people that I was Native American, even though of course I am. And I'm very proud that I am, because some of the people say, they're not looking for sympathy, or they're not looking to get into their success because they're Native American. They don't want to seem as though they're trying to lay on this fact that they're a diverse person and, a member of a diverse community, and they want to get there on their own merits. And Nota B'Gaye is an amazing person, because not only that, he created the Nota B'Gaye Foundation. He reaches out to kids to help them be their best success. And he just really, really works very hard in outreach and making sure young people, can succeed. And, he is someone who I really, really feel very proud of in the things he does. There's also another Native player in the PGA that a lot of people didn't realize, and that's Ricky Fowler. And Ricky Fowler, he's Navajo and also Japanese. And, I've talked to him, and he not only is he just hilarious, the guy is really, really funny and lighthearted. He really, really cares about the success of young people as well. And I find this to be a common thread in Native athletes, is they really, really care about the success of young people. In 2007 and 2008, he was the #1 ranked player at the amateur level. And he is only one of 3 golfers in the world to shoot a 62. And he's won the PGA Tour 6 times. This is just, it's incredible that this guy can achieve this much. And I'm just so very excited to have met him and talked with him. And I will say, though, out of all of my journalism exploits and all the people I've talked to, I have to say one of the greatest experiences of my life is to meet Billy Mills. And if you don't know who Billy Mills is, he is an Olympic athlete who his achievement is called by many to be the greatest upset in Olympic history. He was not expected to win. And if you don't know who Billy Mills is, he was an Olympian in the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo. And he ran the 10,000 meter run. And, there are journalists who have called this the upset of the century. And, this happened in 1964, which is, of course, over 50 years ago. And I thought, when I saw it, I was just like, this has got to be one of the most amazing things I had ever seen. And the fact that me, some little kid who literally grew up on Compton Boulevard in California, yes, that Compton, look at an athlete like this, to achieve so much, because you have to be the best to win the Olympics. You have to be the best at that time, and I'll tell you a funny story after we see it. I don't know if any of you have not seen his Olympic win, you're in for a treat. Wow. I have seen that probably 100 times, and I get excited every time. Oh my gosh, that I can't imagine what it must have been like. And I actually interviewed Billy Mills, over 50 years later. And, I admit during the interview, I was completely awestruck when I was talking to him. And he is, and I have that interview. It's like, I think I have like a 3-minute interview that I'll play in just a moment. But I have to tell you, he is the kindest, most gracious, amazing person with the biggest heart I have ever met in terms of my interviews. I actually even tweeted this morning, or excuse me, X'd. I posted, I can't say, but I actually put, this was one of the greatest interviews in my career. And I'll play it in just a moment. But what he did when he was running the race, you know, first of all, he was saying, I can't go back home without, you know, because for the rest of my life, I'll get smacked, you know, for not coming in first place. And so just before I'll tell you the story, I got to tell him. I actually have a athletic story of my own that I actually got to tell to Billy Mills, and he thought it was amazing. And I was just like, are you kidding? I'm telling Billy Mills a running story. So when I was in the Army, when I was in the California Military Academy trying to become an officer, the attrition rate in the California Military Academy was huge. I mean, I think 60 to 70% dropout. And because I was in the National Guard, I was in regular Army first, and then I joined the National Guard. And when you're in the National Guard, there is a difference. In the regular Army, there's OCS, and in the National Guard, there's the Military Academy, which means you go for a year. But it's 1 weekend a month, and then twice for about 2.5 weeks. So for a year, you're doing this. So after the second time we went to the final 2 weeks where you're trying to become, you know, a graduate, the attrition rate was so high that Alpha Company, the other company, and Bravo Company, the one I was in, you know, combined because we lost so many people that had just quit. So they're joined, and they said, okay, to join us, we're going to have a physical training, you know, physical PT exam. You know, part of the PT exam is the 2-mile run. So I was like, all right, great. And I'm a good runner, you know, native stereotype. Yes, of course. So the guys, this other kid who's like, he's walking around, he's a short kid. He's going, all right, somebody beat me. And I'm like, I ain't saying nothing. I don't know how fast that guy is. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say nothing. You know, he may beat me. I don't know. So the race starts, you know, and it's 8 laps. So we run. And we get to the 7th lap. And I'm catching up to him. And I finally do. And there's about half a lap left to go. So I'm running alongside him. And I'm telling this story to Billy Mills on my radio show that I had years ago. So I'm running along, and I look at the guy next to me. I go, hey, you know, I'm trying to be like, hey, let's join forces. Let's be a teamwork effort here, right? So I'm running. So I look at the guy next to me, and I said, hey, let's join Alpha Company and Bravo Company in a gesture of solidarity. We could join arms and cross the finish line at the same time. You know, I tell him this because we're both doing really well. Entrance is coming. I mean, the finish line's coming up, right? And I'm like, hey, what do you say? You know, and I'm talking, having a normal conversation because I'm doing good. And he goes, I'm all, right. I said, all right, buddy. So I pull on my Billy Mills kick, and that's what I call it to this day. And I said, all right, I haven't kicked it. So I go, and I run ahead, and I run so far ahead, like with my kick, I run off the track, grab the Bravo Company flag, run back onto the track, and cross the finish line with the flag. And everyone goes, yeah, you know. And I got to tell Billy Mills this story. And he goes, Vincent, that is an amazing story. I'm like, please, Mr. Olympian, you are not telling me I told you a good story. So that's one of those moments. I was just like, I cannot believe I just told Billy Mills the story, because this is the guy who won the biggest upset of all time. So that to me is one of those amazing moments that I will cherish to the end of my days. So I got to interview Billy Mills, And we'll play that interview for you now. It's like I said, it's about 3 minutes. So here we go. This was, again, I couldn't believe that I'm like meeting with him in person. And this is about 53 years after his Olympic win. So here we go.
This is Billy Mills.
So the last couple of minutes here. I mean, the last couple of moments.
Vincent, you might, if you can, you might want to bring the volume up a little bit on the video if it's possible.
Can you hear it, Stephen?
It's very faint.
What's that?
It's very faint.
Can you hear it, Stephen?
Yeah, it's just very quiet.
Okay. All right, let me see if I can turn it up.
You crossed that finish line before anybody else. Did you ever foresee your legacy?
Is it still low, Stephen?
To now? I mean, you
Yeah. If there's any way to bring it up a little bit, and we can bring it up on.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to. Okay, yeah, sure. Let me try.
Did you foresee going this far for this long?
I had no concept of what I'd be doing today.
That's good.
All I knew, as a young boy, my mom died. My dad told me I had broken wings. And it takes a train to get broken wings. And he telling me, not his version of it, how I matured to understand him, telling me that the pursuit of the dream is broken wings. He also leads you to identify the passion.
All right. And last few moments here. Here we go.
Now, the wings of the eagle, breaking the tape, won the race, and almost instantly I knew there were actually two races I was in. The first race was the hero of the soul. And in the process, trying to win the gold medal. And I got on both. And so far more powerful than the gold medal is healing the broken soul. So, my wife and I, Tricia, we gave a lot of thought what are we going to do with our lives. And it was the Native American virtues and values that empowered me to heal the broken soul.
Mr. Mills, I can't say enough how much I appreciate talking with you today. It is an honor to see you. And if I could shake your hand and show folks that I'm shaking hands with history.
And I'm shaking hands with one of my wife and I's heroes.
Oh my God.
What? So as I was there interviewing Billy Mills, my literal hero, he says I was one of his because little did I know he had been reading my articles for years. I was like, clunk. I was like, are you kidding? Did Billy Mills just say that to me? I was just like, unbelievable. So needless to say, one of the most epic moments of my life was to talk to Billy Mills, and to have him give me a compliment was just, I didn't know what to do with it. So what he did for the rest of his life and has continued to do today, you can go to indianyouth.org if you're interested. He has the Dream Starters, in which he gives money to like grants to young Native youth who come up with ideas to help improve their communities. And he's done this for years and years and years. He is just an incredible man who has done so much. I mean, we're talking things like, helping their community get dental care, to another young man who started a video game that teaches the Oglala language. Anybody who is a Native Dream Starter, as he calls them, he gives them grants. And I'm like, what kind of amazing, wonderful person is this? So this is what a lot of athletes that I've talked to really use their platform to reach out and help their communities. So here's quite a few more of the athletes that I've talked with, interviewed, featured, written about, etc. That you may or may not have heard of, or maybe you did or didn't know. Jacoby Ellsbury, he was a two-time World Series champion for the Red Sox. World Series champion. He won the World Series in 2013, 2007, and he also played with the New York Yankees. And then he actually got injured and actually left in 2019 from the Yankees. And they said because he had gotten medical care that was not authorized, he just, I guess, went and saw the doctor or something. I don't know. They were actually going to renege on his contract and be like, not giving him his money. And so they actually eventually did agree to give them the remainder of his contract. But his contract by some journalists was called the worst contract ever in professional baseball. But he got his money, so good for you, Jacoby. But he's a very, very cool guy who also reaches out to his community. Another one. This is one of the gentlemen in my community. His name is Alwyn Morris, and he is Mohawk. He's Mohawk from Ganawage. I'm from Akwesasne. He's from Ganawage. And the cool thing about Alwyn Morris is when he went to the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984 and won a gold medal in kayaking. If you look up his photos, and after doing this, I was like, I should have put one of those photos up here of how he looks, because this guy has some of the biggest guns. I mean, just there. His arms are massive. You figure kayak, he's just rowing. But when he got his gold medal, he held up an eagle feather, and it was considered by many to be, the eagle feather heard around the world, because it was, a very, very cool moment where he, exhibited his native pride in honor of his grandfather who had passed and didn't get to see him in the Olympics. But a fun story about Alwyn Morris is about 16, 17 years ago. Alwyn Morris was my very, very, very first interview ever as a journalist and a book author. And I'll tell you, when I was talking to him on the phone, I was like, "Hi, Mr. Morris." I had no idea how to do an interview. And I was in shock that I requested the interview and he said yes. And he is in my book, Native Athletes in Action. And, it was just a pivotal moment in my own career, because I realized that people get what they ask for. And if any of you, no matter what position you are in your job or your career aspirations, or as a college student or at whatever you're doing, if there is something you want to do, this is when you hear that advice of do something that scares you every day. You know what I'm saying? So I cannot tell you. Here, I'm sitting here listening to you, Stephen, saying all these things about what I've done, and I'm like, my gosh, that's a long bio. But I'll tell you, is so many of those things that you read off, when I was first starting them, I was a nervous wreck, because I cannot tell you how many times I felt like I was an imposter or didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm telling each of you listening today, if there are times where you feel like you don't know what you're doing, or you're thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? That is fantastic. That's great. Recognize that as a step to your success, because many, many times, in order to learn, you have to, block your nose and jump in the water, just do it. And you'll find out that, I guess I could get through that all right. And many times I've looked back and went, wow, I made it. Even something like the speaking engagement here today. I walk up and I'm like, am I going to be able to do this? Even now, and it's exciting because I just do it anyways. And what do you know? It tends to work out, because there is nothing at all wrong with doing a lot of research. Yes, I've done tons of research. I'm not going to come into this just blind. I do my research and my homework before I do it. But it's just to see Alwyn Morris with a gold medal, to talk to Billy Mills, to Speak with No Tabi Gay, all these different amazing athletes, there's always been a part of me in my life that's like, wow, I'm very excited that I can be here. So I want to encourage any of you out there, if you're nervous about what you're getting into because you're not sure, that's okay. That's normal. That's what you're supposed to do. But just do your homework beforehand and you'll be all right. So another cool thing I did was I went to the World Indoor Lacrosse Championships to interview the Thompson brothers. And these guys are incredible. If you're not familiar with the Thompson brothers, they're Onondaga, and they are lacrosse players, and they are amazing. They are so talented. Lyle Thompson, is a two-time Tewaaraton Award winner. And, I would say Dewa Aladon, which is Tewaaraton, is how it's spelled in English, Tewaaraton, if you were to read it out. But what it means is lacrosse. And the interesting thing about lacrosse is that here it was, and if you look next to me here, this way, I'm going to get reversed. If you look, this says the Creator's Game. This is an article I wrote for the Smithsonian, American Indian Magazine. So the Smithsonian let me write an article about lacrosse. And it started out as a Haudenosaunee, game. And the United States and Canada, they grabbed onto it, and then afterwards didn't allow native players to play lacrosse. Here it was created by the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, and natives couldn't be in it. And that's kind of the story, isn't it? So many times, but these guys are incredible. It's Jeremy, Lyle, Miles, and Jerome. They made it to professional lacrosse. They play for the Buffalo Bandits all over the country, and they are some of the most incredibly talented players. And Miles and Lyle were in a Nike commercial a couple years back, playing lacrosse. And the cool one fun story about this, and it's 12:40, so I'll make sure and wrap it up quick. But one very interesting thing about the World Indoor Lacrosse Championships in 2015 was it was held on the Onondaga Nation for the first time. And many of the players who came from different countries went to the tribal office and had their passport stamped, because to recognize Onondaga as a sovereign nation, except for the Canadians. So in the middle of the games, when one of the Canadian players was walking from one place to the next behind the scenes, I walked up and go, "Hey, how come you guys didn't?" As a journalist, I'm all, "Hey, how come you guys didn't have your passport stamped?" And literally the games almost stopped as all the people came up to me and they're like, "Hey, you can't be asking that. We'll kick you out." I said, "Are you telling me you're going to kick a native journalist off a sovereign territory? Is that what you're telling me?" They're like, "Well, me as the journalist causing trouble." So these guys are just amazing, the Thompson brothers. So here's a couple of the journalists I interviewed. I'll do this quickly, because we're getting near the end here. But some of the really wonderful journalists, many of the wonderful athletes I've interviewed in my career. Ross Anderson, who is a downhill skiing champion, and he is Cheyenne and Arapaho, and he is an American record holder that does downhill speed skiing. And you know how fast he's gotten going downhill on those skis? 154 miles an hour. 154. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Can you imagine if you crash at that speed? 154 miles an hour. That is the American record. Another is a Paralympian. Her name is Sherry Matson. And it used to be Sherry Becerra Matson, but it's Sherry Matson. And she is a multi medal winning, champion. And she has legs, but they're very small. You can't quite tell, but she had, a virus in her spine when she was a child, and her legs lost use of it. So she became a very, very well-established Paralympian, and she's Omaha. So many gold medals. Stephanie Murata, who is no joke. This girl's tough. She's Osage, and she was a U.S. woman champion in wrestling, 8 times the champion of the United States, 8-time champion. And one of the very cool is Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell. A lot of people do not know that Senator Nighthorse Campbell was also an Olympic judo champion in the 1964 Olympics. And one really cool thing about him too is he's an established jewelry maker who learned some of his techniques from sword makers in Japan, some of the inlays and stuff he does. The guy is just amazing, you know, but he was the first Native American on the Olympic judo team in 1964. And to wrap it up here, you know, we have Jordan Tutu, you know, Shiloh LeBeau and the Schimmel sisters here. The Schimmel sisters are amazing in that they helped, you know, their University of Louisville make it to the Final Four, and they were playing on the same team. And you know, Shoni got into some, you know, kind of tough stuff. You know, she eventually got out, but when she played for her team in the Atlanta Dream, her jersey became the best-selling jersey in the WNBA. That's how much she was supported. Jordan Tutu is one of the toughest hockey players in the NHL. They called him the tree trunk because when you hit him, the guy just didn't move. And Shiloh LeBeau is a Olympic hopeful in boxing. You know, many medals, belts. You know, keep an eye on her. She's Navajo. She might make it to the Olympics in 2024. So, you know, on the last note here, you know, there were some people asking me a lot of things about mascots. And as we know, the Washington Redskins changed to the Commanders, and Chief Wahoo's been discontinued from the Cleveland Indians. And of course, you can see Chief Alinowick here, this way, right here. There is a, you know, that is with, you know, the Illinois University, you know, the guy who comes out and dances like a chief. And a lot of people say, you know, what do you feel about, you know, mascots, Vincent? And I say, well, you know, I don't like it. I don't like it. And people say, well, it gives honor. You know, there's a lot of honor in mascots in sports because, you know, how else are we going to remember? And I'm like, you know, I just don't subscribe to that. I said, because no matter how good your intentions are, you always get this guy. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just tough to take for me. It's just, that's not honor, guys. You know, a lot of people don't even realize the Kansas City Chiefs, the name behind it is from a, you know, a man who is not native, who liked to dress up like an Indian. So, you know, that's my 2 cents on that, you know, but I've had a really an amazing career, and it's really exciting that myself as a journalist has gotten to talk to so many fantastic athletes and people doing amazing things. And, you know, if you want to look for Native athletes, you know, of course you can do a simple Google search, you know, I mean, from anywhere to, you know, from Indian sports, and that's ndnsports.com. They do a lot of great stuff on sports. You can find so much great information out there. Nike also does their N7 line of Native inspired, you know, things like, you know, athletic apparel, and they have actual sports stars who are Native that serve as Nike N7 ambassadors. You know, so there is so much great stuff out there for you guys to learn. And of course, you can reach out to me on social media if you guys have questions about things like that. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this, because it's been an exciting career, you know, and I'm not slowing down yet, but I've been so fortunate to talk to so many great people. I've really had just a fantastic time. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Criswell, who reached out to me, and you know, I've always enjoyed speaking with you, and you guys owe him a round of applause for doing such a wonderful work, because he's the backbone, you know, with a lot of people helping him, of course, to all this to happen this month. So thank you so much. Thank you all, and happy Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you. Well, this is just my ploy to meet people I admire, whose work I admire. And so I have to tell you, it's interesting that Elizabeth had texted me during your talk that our staff and a couple of faculty members put together an exhibit in our center, sort of a general exhibit on Native American athletes and with some local connections. And what you did there was almost a gallery talk for an exhibit that you haven't seen. It was
Really?
it really was. It was like, yeah, we feature, yeah, they're the Thompsons. Yep, it's
Very cool.
and then
very cool.
there's some nice connections here too, because of course, we talked about Jim Thorpe with David Marinus, but Natalie Welch, who was our speaker yesterday, who's a sports management professor at Seattle U, worked for Nike N7 for a little while. So there's
okay, great.
She talked about the Thompson brothers, and then an issue of the I can't remember if it was the Haudenosaunee, but one of the nations wanting or playing in international competition, not as representing the United States, but representing their sovereign nation, and that
probably the Iroquois Nationals, probably.
Yeah, and the Irish players came to their defense, which I thought was an interesting, given the history.
I have one of those shirts actually, and what happened was the Irish team was going to play in the international lacrosse championships. I believe it was, I can't remember where it was, but the Iroquois Nationals were not invited to be in it. So Ireland said they are better than us this year. We're dropping out, and they are taking our spot. That's in a huge, and they actually created a shirt that had the Iroquois Nationals and Irish saying on there. It was really, really wonderful. I mean, such incredible and beautiful solidarity between Ireland and the Haudenosaunee tribe and Iroquois Nationals. It was really wonderful, very wonderful.
Well, we had a few questions, and I may have a few as well. But so speaking of lacrosse, one of the questions we had was, did Jim Thorpe ever play lacrosse?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. The guy played everything. I mean, he's probably got like a 300 in bowling.
Yeah. Probably darts champion.
Probably the guy was just literally like I have. Just doing his research, I personally, I'm not going to say no, because, there's so many tribes that came to the Carlisle, school. So I would imagine, yes, to be honest with you. I don't believe professional. I just haven't come across it, but that doesn't mean it's not out there. Sometimes you just didn't, if you don't look for it specifically, maybe you didn't see it. But now I'm curious. Now I'm going to go do some research and find out. I would venture to guess yes.
Yeah, it's not a sport that he's known for, but
no,
neither was baseball, and he played professional. So it's
and the guy was amazing.
Yeah, and then a question: what year was the Billy Mills Olympic win?
1964.
64. Okay. Then we have a comment here. Some sources also mention that Franklin Pierce worked for Colonel Cummings' Wild West Indian Congress and Rough Riders of the World during the 1904 Olympics.
I did hear that actually. Yes, I did hear that actually. I don't have much more than that without doing research in front of me, to be honest with you. I don't like to say something, something like that. Please reach out to me on socials, because what I can do is look it up and do some research on it and find out, because off the top of my head, I remember hearing that absolutely, but I don't have specifics on it, just to be honest with you.
Well, and I believe your contact information's in the chat there. We have a couple.
Okay, great, wonderful. Please feel free to reach out, anyone, if you'd like to, please.
There we are, at Vince Schilling.
Perfect.
We've got Amari Dryden, who says, "Go Cards!" I got to meet Shawnee and Jude many times growing up in Louisville while they were at the University of Louisiana or Louisville.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got to give them credit for something about the Schimmels. Man, they were so hilariously sarcastic, and I thought they're like, no, we don't feel like doing that. I was like, what? I remember just asking questions. They were just giving me so much smack. And they were like, no, we don't feel like it. I was like, well, oh, okay. And they're like, I was like, oh, you got me. Really hilarious. What was really, really neat about Jude Schimmel is, after her sister went to the WNBA, I went to, and I was a former member of the White House press pool. And, I went to a lot of events. I was even invited to Vice President Biden's house when he was vice president with Obama. And I reported on Native American artists. And I didn't know he was going to be there, and just shows up. And I was like, oh, hello, Mr. Vice President. How are you, sir? Shook his hand. But here I went to an event at the White House where Obama was speaking, and Jude Schimmel was the person leading it and interviewing Obama. I mean, so Jude Schimmel was interviewing the president. I was like, you go, Jude. That was really, really kind of remarkable because I didn't know that was even happening. Nobody knew what to expect. Literally, and Obama actually even walked out before anyone was even ready. I mean, a lot of people are like trying to like fumble with their camera. You hear this almost crashing sounds as people are like trying to get their cameras started up. Luckily, I was like, record. He surprised us all. It was amazing event though. It was pretty wild.
Well, let's see. Is it the Sandy? Is it the Sandy sisters? Kaya, I guess, and Kateri are Ojibwe hockey players. Still in high school in Minnesota. They're state champions. Have you heard of them?
Yes, I have heard of them. Other than that, I don't know much about it. You know what's also interesting is I also interviewed players who were ringette players because for the longest time, girls were not allowed to be in hockey. So they used to play just ringette, which was similar to hockey, but just with, pointed sticks and rubber rings. The wildest thing. Yeah, that's in my book, as a matter of fact.
Oh, where does that game come from?
It's in Canada. Good question. I don't know where it comes from.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they're like, we got to let the girls do something, give them rings. It was just really wild story because I was like, I had no idea this even existed.
Well, I was wondering if you have interviewed Austin Corbett, a local player. He's plays for the Carolina Panthers, and I can't remember his tribal affiliation, but it's a Western tribe.
No, but he's on my list.
Yeah, I think he's been injured for a while. I was hoping we could get him down to maybe sign some footballs or whatever. We're going to keep on that. Keep working on that. And I'm wondering how you don't have that Billy Mills quote on everything you do.
Man,
that's a gift.
I mean, geez, Louise, I remember when it first, I was like, I'm not kidding you. When he said that to me, and he was being such a nice guy. I mean, it was just, you could feel his warmth and concern and genuine care for like, you just meet some people who like really, really, really care about other people and really, really care about their welfare. Billy Mills did that. He told me, that there is no way I was going to lose that race because I'm not going to go back to my community and look those kids in the face and say, well, I did the best I could. He's just, he said that, if he didn't win, that's okay. He did his best to be the best he could. But at the same time, he was like, I didn't want to go back and face those kids, in my community. Yeah. And sure enough, boy, what a legacy. He was like, I had no idea my legacy was going to continue until today. Well, that's just amazing.
One of our Canadian colleagues, Claudia Heinemann Priest, says we as in Canadians have the weirdest games. Curling. So, yes, I
yeah, I had never heard of ringette before. Yeah, look it up. It's wild. I'm wondering how it's still doing. I don't know how much it's. I think it's still like a high school sport, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I would be remiss with your knowledge of popular culture as well to not ask you about. There is my understanding there are a couple of films. I think in the works. Resball.
Yep. I'm on the list to do some interviews with that. Yes.
Yeah. Is that look promising? Are we hopeful?
I haven't got a chance to get to it yet.
Okay.
It's Native American Heritage Month. I'm a little busy.
Well, and then the other is I knew there was a Jim Thorpe live action film coming out.
They were talking about for a while. They're doing a Jim Thorpe movie, Bright Path, and I know that Angelina Jolie was on board of one of the producers, but I don't know how well because that was going to go through, but then something else happened, and I think they had to kind of reevaluate. So I don't know about the status of that project at this time. I believe there might even be another project. Yeah, although I do know that Jason Momoa plays Jim Thorpe in a Comedy Central's episode of Drunk History.
Okay. I have missed that one. I thought,
it's pretty funny.
I will look that up.
I was like, it's good to see you, Jason, but you do not look like Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, well, they do some hilarious casting.
Oh my gosh, it was funny. Well, they even talk about how Jim Thorpe had to like go dig through the trash to get shoes and still got a gold medal.
Yeah. So does Jason Momoa dig through trash in this? 'Cause-
Yeah, he's like trying to find shoes. There were like 2 different shoes he had to wear and all kinds of things. It's a pretty funny episode.
Well, that's what I'm doing today then. And finally, I did want to ask, since you mentioned the mascot issue, do you know the status of the Fighting Whiteys? If they're still
No, I don't. You know, I just I can't stand it. I can't. I'm one of those folks, and again, you know, I do like to always say this anytime I speak. I don't speak for all Native people. I speak for myself. Although I do have a lot of folks that share my sentiments, but I don't speak for everyone. But personally, I don't like mascots of any kind that are Native. I just personally do not. You know, it leaves a poor taste in my mouth. I just don't like it.
Well, for those that don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was an intramural team on a Native serving school that created their own mascot. The Native players created the Fighting Whiteys, and their mascot was a sort of 1950s dad smoking a pipe with the slogan "Everything's going to be all white." And, and I mean, it's snarky, and it's a nice flip though of like, oh, okay,
yeah, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. You know, I wouldn't go that route, but
I imagine they made a fortune on merchandise for that.
Probably.
All right, well, thank you for indulging that. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. I should mention that our exhibit that Vincent just explained to you unknowingly, but still, it's up in our gallery at the center, as are our other current exhibits. We have our annual holiday sale where we invite Native crafters and artists to come over and sell. That'll be December 3rd, I believe, the first Saturday in December, as part of the city's holiday festival. And December 8th, we will have our next Lunch and Learn, where Terrence Littlewater will be discussing the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. That'll be on December 8th. And these programs for this week will be up on YouTube. Vincent's talk will be up, and do yourself a favor and go back and watch his talk from last year on popular culture. It's delightful. It's very informative, and really gave me a nice playlist of things to watch and and check out in the future. So again, Vincent, thank you for joining us, and we hope to have you back here again. And I'm sure folks can reach out to you at Vince Schilling with questions, comments. If you have information on Franklin Pierce or others, I'm sure he would be happy to receive that.
Absolutely.
So again, Vince, thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you so much. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
We'll see
Happy
you.
Native American Heritage Month, everyone.
You too, and happy Veterans Day.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.